what I'm going to show you right now is the new shared material layers, or global materials, which is a great new feature in Vue 11. What I want to show you first for this is to create an ecosystem where we can have sort of a hosted material applied to multiple layers within ecosystem materials and part of the instances. So I've just added in standard terrain, and what I'm going to do is just load in material for this. And I'm just going to use some of the Vue defaults. So if we go to the landscape section and click on the rocks and grass, we'll just start with that as kind of a base material. We can edit it, and what I'm going to do is turn on the ecosystem slash particles, and what we can do is add in some plants. So click on the plant icon, and then in the trees section, I'm just going to drag the plum tree into the population list, and also grab the Soneraceae, and then the maple tree, and then I'll also be adding the cherry tree to this, just so we have several instances with their own unique materials. I'm going to switch the shading mode to billboard just because it's a better representation of the scale of the instances. And we can just, for now, use the fast population mode. Increase our density a little bit. And the fast population mode will give us a very fast population for all of our instances. And after we do that, we want to accurately reposition them onto the surface. Because it's just kind of a rough idea to begin with in order to populate as quickly as possible. So we have 4 different instances, all with their own unique materials. If we go to the material list, we can see the leaf plum, the Soneraceae leaf, maple leaf, cherry leaf. To make this more of an obvious change, what I want to do is load in a plant, and I'm going to select the winter pear tree because it has the pear tree branch material that we're going to use to modify or assign to all of the other trees. And what I'm going to do is right click and copy the pear tree branch. I'm going to add a sphere to the scene and paste the material onto it using the aspect tab up here. Or you can edit the object properties if you're using the Xstream plugin through the host application. And then we can delete pear tree. I'll just go ahead and toss the sphere in a new layer. We're not going to render it. Edit the material, and what we can do is right click on the layer and we can share the layer. So now the pear tree branch has been shared, and we can go over to the materials for the ecosystem materials. And if we go down to the bottom right, we can scale up the preview, just these little arrows. And now what I can do is right click, and I can add the shared layer. And I think I will go ahead and scale that down. So with this, what it is, because we're adding a layer, it's not replacing the material. What we can do is open that material and delete the underlying layers. And I'm going to go ahead and do that to just all of the leaves for the trees. So now this shared layer is on all of these different branches, and I could have kept the other branches underneath as well if you wanted to maybe stack some additional leaves on top of it. And if we go to the sphere, which has the main material on it, I'm just going to go ahead and change the overall color to something a little more noticeable, just let's say purple. And we can see it updates everything within the scene. Now, in a way, you could have kind of did this before by just having the same material pasted onto the instances, but a lot of times it would kind of overwrite or keep separate materials for the ecosystem, so it makes it a lot easier that way. But the most useful part of this is the ability to have it as a layer, so that you can have just an individual layer of material linked to a shared material, as opposed to having to use an entirely the same material on different objects, which would overwrite anything else you have there. So to take a look at that a little more in depth, I'm going to delete the terrain, create a new one, and then add a rock. So go ahead and right-click onto the rock icon and load in the rough desert rock. Scale it up. And what I'm going to do next is go to the terrain, add the rock and grass material to it, edit the material, and add a new layer, which I'll go to landscapes, and I'll just use the grass variations. Set our alpha boost to 0, and we'll set the environment to 0 to about 50 degrees. So now on the rough desert rock, we can add a shared layer. First we need to share the grass variation, so I'm going to go ahead and share it. We can do that with this icon here, or that's actually for adding the shared layer. So we'll just right-click and share the layer, and then we can go to the rough desert rock. We can add the grass variation on top of it. So now we still have an underlying material. It does look like the individual options for environment and the alpha boost can be changed independently. But we should be able to go into the terrain now and edit the grass variations, which is shared, and I'll just go ahead and make that red. And then we start to see that showing up on the rock. So then we can have individual layers over different types of materials within the hierarchy of the material layers, which is a pretty neat, cool new feature that's part of Vue 11.